Allie, and I'm going to show you how to do this beautiful Brilliant Bezel pendant. So if you want to do this Brilliant Bezel pendant, you're going to need some supplies like crystals, rivolis, and you can get the link in the description of the video. If you click down on that description, there'll be a link there to get back to our website. You can gather up the materials and it'll list everything that's used in this project with the complete details. Gather everything up and let's get started. So to begin, we're going to start with the back of our bezel. And the back of our bezel is going to be a series of 12 seed beads that are 2 8-ohs. So we have our primary color and then a secondary color. I'm not even putting the secondary color on the list of materials because you don't see it. It's just here to help us learn. If you don't have a secondary color, again, you won't see it along the back. You can just use the same 8-oh color. So I have 12 beads on here of my primary color, followed by 1 of that secondary color. So a total of 24 beads are going to go around to create the back of the bezel, and we're going to build the Hubble stitch on top of that. From here, after you have those 12 beads on with the extra 8-oh after, you're going to simply tie this into a loop. And I only need enough thread at the end to make it easiest to go in and be able to tie a knot at the very end. After my knot here, I want to go back into the project and I want to go over toward my beads and come out through my second 8-oh in that darker purple, which is going to be my Hubble stitch. From here then, we are going to do Hubble stitch, which will bring toward the top. The Hubble stitch units here, we're going to add an 11-oh seed bead between each of them to make them kind of stable and sit a little bit further apart. So you are going to want to get out your 11-oh seed beads, and then we have our purple 8-ohs ready to go. Once you have that, we're going to go right into our Hubble stitch. So our darker purple here is going to be the bottom of each of our units. We're going to grab 2 more beads coming out of that purple, go back through that purple bead that we're currently coming out of. That separates those out to sit almost in a Y. I want you to go back up through the first bead, add another one of your purple beads, and go down the second bead of that Y. That is 1 Hubble unit. Between each Hubble unit, we are going to put an 11-oh seed bead. Now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to start out with 2 of our 8-oh seed beads. Then we're going to sew through the 8-oh that sits below from that base unit. You're going to sew back towards the Hubble unit that you just finished, just through that 8-oh. Once you're there, you're going to sew back up through that first bead of those 2 that you just added. So see how I'm pulling and I'm going back up through that first bead that I just added. I add 1 more 8-oh seed bead and I come down through the second bead. I'll show that one more time. I'm adding an 11-oh just as a spacer, 2 more 8s, catching on to the 8 from the original row of 12 8s and sewing back toward the last Hubble unit. Once I do so, those beads kind of fall over on top of the project. I'm going to sew back up through bead number 1 of the 8-ohs that we just added. Give a nice tight pull, add 1 more 8-oh, and sew down. We have a total of 3 of our Hubble units completed. I need to do 12, so I've got 9 more to go, adding that 11-oh seed bead between each one. Once you're done going around and adding those 12 Hubble units, you'll notice you almost have about 12 points to what looks like a star. I'm at the last one here, and I'm going to go back into the first and connect the units together, the first and the 12th unit, and I'm going to do so with an 11-oh on my thread and needle. Taking the 11-oh after coming out of bead 2, after putting on that third bead there, and I'm going to sew up through bead number 1 from my first Hubble unit. That's going to connect them, and then I'm also going to sew up through the last Hubble bead. You can see it already wants to kind of curve in. That's what we're going to do, is we're going to do a second round of Hubble units. This time we are going to be using 11-oh seed beads rather than the 8-oh seed beads, which is going to pull it towards the center for me to be able to put the 18mm rivoli into that interior. From here, we're going to do a second row of Hubble with the 11-oh seed beads and a 15-oh between it. So I'm coming out of the bottom what was the top of the previous Hubble unit, and it's going to be the bottom of the new Hubble unit when I'm working with it. You're going to put on 2 of your gold 11 O's. So back through that bottom bead here. Those sit in the Y. Go up through bead number 1, right there. Add another one of your gold beads and go down through bead number 2. So just like we've been doing on the previous row, the exact same thing. In between each of our Hubble units, this time we're going to add 1 15-0, so just a tiny little bead in there. 2 more 11-0s in through the top of the previous Hubble unit, which is now going to be the bottom. Lay those down next to the project, up through bead number 1 of those gold beads towards bead number 2. Pull it nice and tight, add another 11-0, and come on down. As you get further into this, you're going to notice just naturally, because of the size, that you are going to have these 11-0s start to curve in. That is perfect because that is going to be how the beads sit in place. So that's going to be what we need for that bezel to hold in our crystal. So again, just going around, here's 3 of my Hubble units, the new ones in the gold. They're going to bend towards the center, add the 15 in between each, and continue on adding the 2 11s through the 8, back up through that first 11, separating those out, kind of pulling nice and tight, add another 11, and come down through bead number 2. I've got 4 down, so I've got more to go to get that whole interior. Again, you're going to drop that crystal in, and those are going to bend towards the center. We'll link them up to really hold the crystal in the front. Coming back around then, after finishing those 12 units, you're going to add a 15-0, just like we've been doing, and then connect that first unit to the last unit with that 15. From here, I want to tighten this a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is skip over that top 11-0 there. So down, and you'll notice I turned it to the back just so you could see a little bit better. So down through bead number 2. This is going to lock it in place a little bit more. Go down through that Hubble stitch bead of the 8-0. Go back up through then the Hubble unit bead number 1. And then come out. So basically doing a whole rotation of that Hubble stitch through bead 1, through bead 2, through the bottom, and then out this 3rd bead along the top. So this is now our little bezel that our 18mm rivoli is going to sit in. You can see that there's some play and some movement. What we're going to do is lock it in here even tighter by pulling in between the units. To pull in between the units, we are going to be using 15-0s. And instead of using the purple 15-0s, I really want the gold to be the focus on the interior. So I'm going to use some 15-0s in the interior of the gold. Coming out that top gold bead, you're going to add 2 15-0s and then sew into the next top gold bead. 2 15-0s into that next top gold bead. So there's going to be 12 beads that we're catching in on, and you can see that it's starting to pull right away. So 2 beads go on into that next bead. And the thing that I love about the Hubble stitch is it's very forgiving. So you might have it be a little gappy around the exterior, but as we go in here and catch on to that interior, oops, and I missed one there, it will pull really nice and tight. As it pulls nice and tight, your 8-0 seed beads that sit on the outside from the previous Hubble row, from row number 1 of the Hubble, will pop towards the outer edge. As that pops towards the outer edge, that gives us an opportunity to decorate that outer edge with, of course, some crystals. So continue going around this whole interior, adding 2 of your 15-0s. As you go back and finish this interior loop, I want you to go around it one more time. So you're going around it one time, adding 2 15-0s between each, and then you're going to go around a second time just with your thread to reinforce the front of the bezel so you don't lose your crystal. All it's going to be is taking your thread and needle around this thread path, not adding any extra beads, just literally sewing through all of these 15s and 11 that you're adding and that your thread is currently going through. So you're seeing here how this is bringing them in towards the center, Last two 15-0s go on. And then I'm going to sew back through the beads that I just added, as well as the 11-0s that we're going through. And see how close and beautiful that brings it right away into that nice tight design, popping out those 8-0 seed beads ready for us to decorate them. So one more trip around this beautiful crystal, going through the 15s and that point 11. Once we've gone around and reinforced this loop, and this looks like it is the perfect colors for my high school. We were purple and gold. All right, I want to be coming out of one of the 11-0 seed beads. So I'm going to take my thread and needle, backtrack at one, or go back previously or further. So I'm coming out one of the 11-0 seed beads here, and I'm going to drop down through the next 11-0 right along the path. So you're going to drop through one of those basically Y beads. From here, you're going to go into the interior of that purple 8-0 seed bead, and then these purple beads line up perfectly on the outside in order to decorate. We're going to pop in a little 2 or 3 millimeter crystal. Either will work, and I'm going to use the gold color of the 15-0 to bring a little bit of that gold towards the exterior. Then what I want to show you after that, so you're going to need 12 of these, is how to attach that loop bail. It was in the treasure box this month, and I think a lot of people don't really know how to use the loop bail. I'm going to actually sew the loop bail to the back of the project so we just see the nice metal. It looks like a finished project. But before that, grab out your crystals, grab out your 15-0s, and do 15, crystal 15 through the next 8-0 seed bead that's there. Again, 15, crystal 15. You can also do 8-0s if you don't want it to be as blingy, but I like to bring a little bit of that shine to the exterior. 15, crystal, 15, and on to the next one. So you're just going to go around the whole exterior, dropping in those crystals around the sides. Here is what it looks like after the crystals are added, and what we're going to do is get ready to put on our bail. So there's a ton of different ways you can do this. Obviously, you can go in and you can put a bead on this side, kind of use it as an anchor. You can use a jump ring. You can use a wire guard to connect to the back. I'm going to show you how to just sew it into the back here. So coming out of the last crystal here towards that interior, I'm going to go through one of the 8-0s that sits to the side, bring my thread and needle out. So see how the thread and needle are out there right along the side. From here then, coming out is where I'm going to get ready to put on my piece. Now, like I said, you can go through right away through that interior. Grab another bead like a 6-0 or an 8-0 even. You can see it's going to kind of fit along the side, but it'll fit through there. So instead what I'm going to do is just sew it into place. I'm going to take my thread and needle from that 8-0 there over to the next one in that same Hubble unit. And see how that kind of turns it on the side. What we want to do is sew through the opposite way now, going into it, coming out of that Hubble unit. And we are going to lock it in place further down. Think about it as a sewing through a button, really, is what you're doing. I don't want to see the loop to the front. I just want to hide the loop along the back. And I'm just going to hold it there, look at my piece and where my thread is coming out, sew through the beads near it, through the loop. And then if you want to, you can decorate it and hold it down with beads at the very end. To hold it down and bring it even further too, you can come down into the bottom interior of the piece, and that'll pull it down along the back. Sew back through the piece, back along the bottom here. You're just anchoring it in place. If you have a pretty 8-0 seed bead or a 6-0, a 6 millimeter, 4 millimeter crystal, 6 millimeter crystal, you can certainly do that. But see how I'm just going through, adding it, sewing back through where I see it, and that will just sit right along the back of the pendant. So you want to think about it, like I said, as sewing a button in place, going around through the loop, once it's down there, through the baseline. And once I have about 6, 7, 8 pieces of thread through the bail, I'm not going to worry about it. When you flip it over to the front, you can see how that bail is going to sit right along the back, kind of in between, and just make the piece look really, really finished. From here, my thread and needle are already next to one another. So I'm just going to take the two and simply tie them into a knot towards the back. Once they're in that knot, take your thread burner or your scissors. I prefer a thread burner because it helps secure that knot, and burn down that thread edge right next to the project. Burning it also will help, again, keep that knot together. And voila, done with your pendant. So this Brilliant Bezel pendant really can have a ton of different changes. I love the look of it. You can see it kind of on my wrist here in black. You could make it the center of a necklace. You could even do it as earrings. If you want to do a smaller one, we have other videos for different Hubble stitch counts, or you can switch the 8 O's to 11 O's as well. I forgot to mention at the start, I did use the green dragon thread in the size 8 along with a size 10 needle. So pretty easy to do. You can do these in tons of different things, hang stuff down, really make it your own. Thanks so much for joining me in creating this Brilliant Bezel pendant. I love the fact that it has that nice look on the gold chain and it has a very jeweler's look to it. Remember, if you need any of the supplies like the bail or the crystals, go ahead below the video and look at the links that are in the description. In addition, don't be scared or shy to post your version of it in our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. Hit that little subscribe button so you don't miss anything from us here at Potomac Beads, and stay tuned for more inspirational designs.